Good morning, children. Today we will learn about computer memory and the types of software. Computer stores data in the form of zeros and ones. These are called as the binary digits or bits, which are 0 and 1, on or off. These two digits makes it by, so we call them as binary digits. And each bit stores than information, and every word is of equal length. Suppose a word is having 4 characters, its size will be 4 byte. And the addressing scheme starts from 0 to n minus 1. Here we see the chart of the computer memory where we see the different units. 1 bit is binary digit 0 or 1. 4 bits makes a nibble, 8 bits makes 1 byte, and so on it goes on. 1 kilobyte is equal to 1024 bytes. 1 megabyte is 1024 kilobytes. Such type of questions you may get for 1 mark. Blanks, in the blanks it may be asked. 1 byte is equal to dash, 1 terabyte is equal to dash. So just have a look on this table. Then we can see that what are the functional components of a computer system. Computer memory is divided into mainly primary memory called as main memory and the secondary memory, and one more, that is the extended or expanded memory, the cache memory. Primary memory is further classified into two types: ROM, that is the read-only memory, which is further of PROM, EPROM, EEPROM, and EAPROM. Whereas RAM is read and write memory, the random access memory, further classified into static RAM and dynamic RAM. Secondary memory we are often using in the form of the flash memory, that is the pen drives, the optical discs like DVDs, CDs, magnetic discs we used in the form of the floppy disk, hard disk, magnetic disk, etc. And SSD, nowadays we are using it for high speed, high capacity. SSD is also being used. Now, we see that RAM is also called as the random access memory, and it is the main memory. It is further of two types, static RAM and dynamic RAM. Whereas volatile memory is RAM and non-volatile is ROM. Why? Because RAM depends upon the power supply. Non-volatile memory is not depending upon the power supply, and we can retain the data even the power abruptly shuts down the system. But the data can be retained from the RAM. You can see the picture of the RAM. You might have seen the RAM images: 8 GBs, 4 GBs, 16, 128, 256, etc. Now, RAM is also called as read and write memory. It holds the program, the operating system, and the data required by the system. Generally, RAM is a volatile memory, and it does not retain the data when the system is turned off. A data needs to be stored while the system is off must be written to a permanent storage device like flash memory or hard disk. A mobile phone we have generally heard of is having the memories in the form of 128 KBs, 256, and so on. And the two basic types of RAM are static and dynamic RAM. Static RAM is complex than dynamic RAM. It is faster than dynamic RAM. They are used in the cache memory, whereas DRAMs are used in the memory. You can go through this for a question of 2 marks. For 4 differences you might be asked. Then we come to the ROM, which is the read-only memory. It is a class of the storage medium used in the computers and other electronic devices. Data stored in the ROM cannot be modified or can be modified only slowly or with difficulty. So it is mainly used to distribute the firmware. A software. What is a firmware? Software that is very closely tied to the specific hardware and unlikely to need frequent updates. For that, where the updations are not required easily or generally, for that we use read-only memory. There are different types of ROM. Read-only memory, programmable read-only memory, erasable programmable read-only memory, where the data can be erased. Electrically erasable is by the use of the electric manner in which we can remove the data, right? Writing or flashing an EPROM is much slower than from a ROM. Then comes the cache memory. Cache is a high-speed storage mechanism. It is either a reserved section of main memory or an independent high-speed storage device. Memory cache is also sometimes called as RAM or cache store. RAM comes in two forms, as already told, static RAM and dynamic RAM. Memory caching is effective because most programs access the same data or the instructions over and over. So by keeping as much of the information as possible in the static RAM, the computer avoids accessing the slower dynamic RAM. So it is faster. Then we see the secondary memory, also called as auxiliary memory, the external memory, which can store a huge amount of data. And they are less expensive than primary memory. They are mostly found in the form of flash memory, that is our pen drives, the optical discs like CDs, DVDs, the magnetic discs like magnetic discs, floppy disks, hard disks, etc. So secondary memory is required when we want to make a copy of our file, our data. We can store it in the form of secondary memory, a kind of backup. Why? Because it can store the data for much more data and most portable way of storing the data. Here are the images. We can see the hard disk. Hard disk is having internally the tracks and the sectors. Now the data is getting stored under the tracks and the sectors. See, what is a track? What is a sector? A sector is the smallest physical storage unit, which almost always in the size for hard drives is 512 bytes. And each disk has rings on each side of the platter called the tracks. So, hope you are clear with what is primary memory, what is secondary memory. Primary memory is further of two types, RAM and ROM. Secondary memory comes in the form of auxiliary memory. Then here we will see how the software has been classified. Now firstly we should know what is a software. A software is a program, we all know, which runs on hardware. A program, a set of instruction which runs the hardware is called as software. Softwares are classified into two types, system software and application software. System software means the bare need to run the system. Operating system is the big example of system software. So system software is further of two types, operating system and language processors. What are language processors? Language processors are further divided into assemblers, interpreters, compilers. Whereas software, another part of the software, that is the application software. It comes in the form of packages, user-tailored softwares, utilities and developer tools. We will see them one by one. What is its utility? What are apps? What are operating system? The types of operating systems. So here we define what is operating system? A program which acts as an interface between the user and the hardware. It is Linux, Windows, Unix, etc. Red Hat. Language processors, what are they? Their processor is something which processes the data, which works upon the data, translates. So language processors are such computer softwares or the programs which translate the source code into the machine code. Machine code is what? The object code, which is understood to the machine, the computer, but not the human. Why? Because machine code is in the form of binary language, that is zeros and one. Whereas the human writes the program in the high level language, which is then converted by the language processors into the binary language. So user when writes a program, that program, suppose I am writing a Python program, I am using what? The high level language Python. So that Python program is my source code. Right. And then what is formed? It's object code. So the computer understandable code which can run on the hardware is called as object code. So who will make this code? The language processors will make the object code. So language processors are again what kind of softwares? They are the system softwares. They are basically used to interpret the programming language programs. Then comes the different types of language processors: assembler, compiler, interpreter. Assembler was used in assembly language program to convert the assembly level language program into the binary level language and the vice versa. Assembly language had some pseudocodes, had certain keywords which were to be followed and which then were converted into the machine language by the assembler. Compiler, what does it do? It converts the high level language to the binary language and the vice versa in one go. Interpreter is converting the high level language line by line. We get a question of 2 marks which is very important. What is the difference between compiler and interpreter? As the name stands, compiler, compilation. Compiling means in one go and then telling about the errors and analyzing the program. Whereas interpreter means program is read line by line and then translated. So that is, it is slower. Interpreter is slower. Now, programming language like Python is using interpreter. Whereas the programming languages like C, C++, they use compilers. So compiler and interpreter, again they are what? The language processors, which are converting the high level language program into machine code. Utilities. Utilities, one term is there for utilities. They do the job of housekeeping. Housekeeping means look after the computer. Who looks after our house? Housekeeping. The servants, mothers, we ourselves manage our house by keeping it clean, unwanted junk things to be put in a waste bin, right? So that the things are organized. Enhance the look of our house. We are using certain things, they come under housekeeping. Similarly, for a computer, the utilities are doing the task of housekeeping, which is in the form of, the utilities are in the form of text editor, backup utility, compression utility, then antivirus, disk defragmenter, etc. Now text editor, the notepad, the word pad, they are helping the user to cut, copy, paste, edit the text. Backup utility, when we can keep a backup of the data and information in the form of the pen drive, CDs, DVDs, etc. Compression utility, large files, big files can be compressed so that they can be easily occupy the less space and can be easily retrieved. That is, the examples are WinZip, WinRAR. And the antiviruses like Quick Heal, eScan, they are keeping the system clean. They do not eat up the disk space. They help us to delete the files, overcome the problems of viruses. So we are using antiviruses. Whereas the disk defragmentation tool, what it does, it enhances the speed of the system or the disk. How? It will defragment and rearrange the files so that a pool of memory is created and the chunk of the files are organized in a serial manner. So this is all about the computer memory and the types of software, which will give us a question of 2 marks. Important questions are: differentiate between compiler and interpreter, what are language processors, how utilities are working as housekeeping jobs or doing the housekeeping jobs, name the utilities, then the different units of the computer memory. They are all the questions covered in 1 mark or 2 marks. Thank you and have a nice day.